Okay, good morning and welcome to NIPFP, to our biannual assessment of the Indian economy. As I was just mentioning, we hope for benign environment, but the world doesn't look benign. And so we would like to take some time to look at the likely impact on India of the various potential triggers and stresses playing out in the system. Trump shock, Trump tariffs have now become a phrase that we have all to contend with. Today's paper seems to suggest that US wants to communicate that India and US are on the verge of signing an accord. And so it will give us an element of certainty for Indo-US relation, but it doesn't mean the globe looks more stable. And since we are all interconnected, there are spillover effects for everybody. So, it is. I don't envy the panel because it's like trying to stand on quicksand, and everything seems to be moving very rapidly. But we would still like to hear your considered views on the entire transition that the world economy is going through. So we have three panelists, and Professor Mandal will lead the conversation. Rudrani, Radhika, and Manish will speak about components of this overall story. Since it is a longish kind of exercise, somewhere in the middle, we'll take a little tea break to get our brain cells functional again. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Kavita, and let me join her in welcoming all of you, especially Professor Kaur, who very kindly agreed to be a discussant for this presentation, and also recognize Mr. Bhattacharya, who is here. He is not only a very senior journalist, but I don't know many people who know as much about fiscal policy and budgets as he does. So we are delighted that you are here. I think there are also some colleagues from the Ministry of Finance, you said. No? Good. So let me just, before I hand the presentation over to Radhika, let me just say that this time it is not really business as usual. We do this twice a year, as Kavita mentioned. Once at the beginning of the financial year or the end of the previous financial year, the review and also the outlook. And then around October, when we know how it's playing out the first half of the year, the monsoon and so on. But it is just before discussions start on next year's budget that we have the media review. So that's been our pattern. This year, it's a very special thing because, as Kavita just mentioned, we're not just doing a review and outlook, but really having to contend with something that has happened very disruptively, very disrupting in the global economy, and how this is going to play out. We have not seen many attempts to try and put a quantitative framework to what we are looking at. The IMF has just come out with some numbers, and as usual, other multilaterals are following with similar numbers, but we have our own views on that. But let me not take any more time, and so let me hand it over to Radhika. The rules of the game are that we will make it's a very long presentation, so they will make a presentation. I will only come in if required to prompt something. And then everybody, I think, will be ready for a break and a cup of tea. And then we will come back to have Professor Kaur's comments and have the discussion in the house. So thank you very much again. And Radhika, please.
We'll be talking about starting with the global developments. And here, as we know that global developments is occupying a significant part of the overall discussion. So we are focusing on global developments in two parts. In the first part, we'll just talk about some of the growth projections that were put out by the IMF World Economic Outlook 2 days back, and some country-specific examples. And then we move on to particularly discussing the impact of tariffs on India, some of the sectors that may be vulnerable to tariffs, and some of the sectors where we do see a window of opportunity. Of course, they are subject to a lot of assumptions and caveats, but this is the pattern that we follow. So just to begin with and set the context, this is the graph or the uncertainty that captures the present state of affairs. That on the one side, we have a sharp increase in economic policy uncertainty, which is driven by an increase in trade policy uncertainty. And the increase in uncertainty is much more severe than seen in the previous episodes of crisis like the Russia-Ukraine war or the COVID-19 pandemic. And this policy uncertainty is primarily driven by trade policy uncertainty. These are some of the numbers that were put out by the World Economic Outlook, and there was a lot of, these numbers were keenly awaited because they were the first set of projections post the rollout of tariffs. So what we do see is that the global growth outlook, which was earlier projected at 3.3% for 2024, is now projected at 2.8%. From the January update, it's a slide of 0.5%. The main reason for the sharp slide in growth is attributed to United States and China. In United States, growth is projected to decline from 2.8% to 1.8%, and in China from 5 to 4%. And this is a considerable decline from the January update. For India, the growth is projected to fall from 6.5 to 6.2%. So that's the reference forecast. So this time around, the World Economic Outlook has come up with three sets of forecasts. One is the reference forecast, which is taking into account the period from February to April 4th. That is, it does take into account the impact of reciprocal tariffs. And then there are two alternative set of scenarios. One which doesn't take into account the impact of reciprocal tariffs, and the second which does take into account the impact of the pause that was introduced on April 9. And expectedly, we don't see much difference in the growth projections that are put out post the halt of tariffs, because what the view is that while the global growth projection is similar, there could be difference in composition. But when we look at some of the key indicators of these key economies like the US economy, we see particularly one of the keenly watched indicator is the nowcast, which is a kind of a leading indicator, high frequency indicator of the state of the economy in US. Here we look at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta nowcast of US real GDP. This is showing us the nowcast for the January to March quarter. And we see that in the beginning of February, before this tariff-induced uncertainty kicked in, we saw that the projections are closer to 4%. So the growth was projected at 3.9%, or closer to 3%. And then there was a sharp slide in the projections. And since then, projections have been hovering in the negative territory. So going by this Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta nowcast, US economy is projected to be in recession, is estimated to be in recession for the January to March quarter. And this is corroborated also if we look at some of the other high frequency indicators like the consumer sentiment. Because of the tariff induced uncertainty and a whole host of other disruptions, the layoffs of federal officials, increase in prices, we see that the consumer sentiment has plummeted sharply over the last couple of months. From in January, it was 71.7, and now April value, initial value shows index of consumer sentiment at 50.8. There's also a sharp increase in inflation expectations, both short-term and medium-term. So that is a gist of some of the key indicators that we see for the US. In contrast, what we are seeing in the EU is that there have been attempts at ramping up spending. There have been a big, massive fiscal stimulus program was announced towards military infrastructure and climate spending. And because of that, there was a sharp surge in the German 10-year bond yields. And if you look at the second graph, which is the euro-dollar exchange rate graph, there was a sharp appreciation of the euro-dollar. So the vertical line shows the date on which the German fiscal stimulus was announced, and after that we see a sharp appreciation of the euro-dollar exchange rate. This is also attributed to the weakness of dollar and at the same time some stimulus measure implemented in Germany, as a result of which the growth projections for the EU region as a whole has been revised upwards. Coming to China, China has also been introducing a series of stimulus measures to boost its economy and to offset the impact of tariffs. And now we hear tariffs are close to 245%. So now we see that there is an increase. A lot of stimulus measures have been announced over a couple of last few months, and they mainly focus on reducing interest rates, providing more loans and providing loans at lower interest rates, following in essence a loose monetary policy. Fiscal policy is also moving towards an expansionary phase where the focus has been, they have set up a target of budget deficit of 4% of GDP and economic growth target of 5%. Notably, even for this year, for the first quarter, January to March quarter, the Chinese GDP growth came in at 5.4%, though we may have concerns about the data, but whatever it is, it shows 5.4%. Also, surprise wage increases were given. So there is a lot of attempt at pump priming the Chinese economy to offset the impact of tariffs. And also there is an attempt at devaluation of the Chinese yuan to offset the impact of tariffs. Now,
Radhika, before more part two, just a quick query on the first part. You mentioned that the uncertainty indices are much higher now than even during the pandemic, which was really very, very disruptive. So that is quite surprising, I would say. And the other is that given all these indicators showing a very sharp downturn in the economy, to have this rather mild assessment from the IMF, and which is followed now the World Bank, and then we'll see the same thing with ADB and so on. So would you like to make any remarks on that before we carry on?
Sure, sir. So in our opinion, the IMF projection seem to be a bit cautiously optimistic because they do not take into account the impact of larger disruptions. They seem to only incorporate the impact of tariffs and not take into account the impact of the wider disruptions that is happening in the US economy. And also, they seem to be inconsistent with the series of other projections that are being put out by, say, Global Sachs, Bloomberg. They have upped the projection for the possibility of recession. So the possibility of recession has increased since the beginning of April. And even after the rollout of tariff was paused, the probability of recession still remains high, around 45–60%, ranging between that. So they do seem a bit on the optimistic side. So now we delve deeper into the impact of tariffs. So just we look at some of the tariff key policy announcements that have been, how the tariff policy has evolved, particularly since April. Before that, we know that in February, there were some sector level tariffs were introduced on steel, on other metals, on auto, on some countries like Mexico, Canada, China. But from 2nd of April, we had this comprehensive set of tariffs that were called the Liberation Day tariffs. And the main objective, the stated objective of the tariffs were to reduce trade deficit and revive US manufacturing. On the 9th of April, in a surprising move, the Liberation Day tariffs were paused, and we'll get into conjecture into some of the reasons why the tariffs were paused. Then 11th April exemptions, but okay, one thing is that while the tariffs were paused for all the other countries, they were not paused for China. So China's tariff was retained at 145%. From 11th April onwards, there were some sectoral exemptions were introduced. 14th April, there was some reversal of the earlier policy, which stated that now on pharma and semiconductors, they will be having tariffs. Earlier, they were exempted. 15th April, it was announced that tariff on China is raised to 245%. So overall, when we look at these developments, what we see based on these developments is that there is going to be significant US-China decoupling unless there is a significant de-escalation of the US-China trade tension. But as we stand today, we see that there is a possibility of US-China decoupling, and therefore the threat of dumping of goods from China and other countries to India and other emerging market economies. China is also making an attempt to pump prime its economy, increase its consumption, but nevertheless, there is a threat of dumping going forward. And there is increasing possibility of recession in the US alongside high inflation. That is something, again, which will impact India's growth prospects. Now, let us delve deeper into the specifics of reciprocal tariffs. So this table shows the top 20 countries that have the maximum trade deficit, or rather trade surplus with the US. So US is having trade deficit with these countries. China features at the top, having a trade deficit of $295 billion. Mexico, Vietnam, and so on. India's position is around either 10 or 11, depending upon which year data we take at. But the simple formulation of how this reciprocal tariff is arrived at is primarily looking at the trade deficit and halving it. So that is the reciprocal tariff. It's a very simple formulation. So while notably we know that India has a very high average effective applied tariff rate, but the consideration that is taken to come up with the reciprocal tariffs is just based on trade deficit. And within this framework, certain sectors have been exempted, like pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, copper, energy products. And when we look at this table, we see that India is having a lower relative tariff compared to some of its ASEAN competitors. So that does give us some window of opportunity, assuming that these tariffs remain in place. There are lots of ifs and buts, but we did attempt at making some sectoral projections. But before we delve into the impact of Trump's tariffs, it's important to look at India's trade performance to get a sense of the continuing headwinds in the trade performance. Let's first look at the second graph, which shows the composition of merchandise exports. Let's look at FY25, the latest data. The blue bar shows the merchandise exports, and when we look at this, we see that in FY25 exports growth was virtually flat, but this is mainly due to sharp slump in petroleum exports. When we net out petroleum exports, we see that the non-petroleum exports growth is 6%, and non-petroleum, non-gems and jewelry exports is 7.5%. Coming to this figure, it shows the exports in the last 2 years, 23-24 and 24-25, and also imports in 23-24 and 24-25. Overall, the impact of this is visible in the trade balance. So trade balance increased from $78.4 billion to $94.1 billion in FY25. Overall, if we look at the total exports, it grew by 5.5%. And that is mainly because exports grew by 0.1%. So the growth is driven by services exports. Services exports grew by almost 12% in FY25. So the heavy lifting of overall exports was driven by services exports. And even this year in FY26, given that merchandise exports are likely to be hit by tariff, services exports would have to do the heavy lifting. But because of the slowdown, the increasing possibility of recession, we see that services exports are also likely to be hit. We have also already seen some high frequency indicators suggesting that services exports are likely to remain range bound because most of the services sector companies are reporting muted performance. Now, when we look at some of the sectors that may be vulnerable, to start with, we just look at India's top 10 exports to the US. So this table shows India's top 10 exports to the US, where looking at the data of FY24, electronic goods share is 13.5%, then gems and jewelry. So we are looking at broad categories. Gems and jewelry, 12.8%. Drug formulations 10.3%, machinery 9.1%, and so on. Now, of these, we know that drug formulations and petroleum and crude products, these two products are exempted from the reciprocal tariffs as things stand today. So the sectors that may be impacted given the high volume, just by looking at the fact that these are some of the prominent exports to the US, we see that gems and jewelry, metals, transport equipment are subjected to elevated risk due to higher tariffs. But at the same time, what we see is that there is a window of opportunity in some sectors due to India's relatively lower tariffs. So this is a very interesting table where we have looked at those categories of HS code, the harmonized system code, which is the identifier globally used, to look at those commodities where those countries have the highest share whose tariffs are more than India's. So purely driven by tariff differential, these are those products where India could have a window of opportunity. Of course, there are several other things that will play a role, but only looking at tariff differential, look at sectors like footwear, apparel, articles, furniture, toys and games. All these sectors are labor intensive, and in these sectors, mostly China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Mexico, these are the countries where they are the major suppliers and their tariff rates are much higher than India. So India has a window of opportunity and these are mostly labor intensive. The supply chain configuration is not that complex. So there is a window of opportunity, but there has to be attempts at increasing the scale of manufacturing, addressing the bottlenecks, and some kind of policy support. Here, the assumption is here, so there are various caveats. One is that the other countries would also try to devalue their currency. They would also try to suppress their prices. Those things stand, but just driven by purely tariff differential, we just look at some of the sectors where there could be opportunity for India to increase its market share. At the same time, there are sectors where the threat of dumping has enhanced. So countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Cambodia, where the tariffs are much higher than India, there could be a threat of trade diversion towards India and other countries, particularly if we look at India and we look at some of the products where there is a threat of dumping from China. In addition to steel, we've already seen that government has imposed a 12% safeguard duty on steel product. But in addition to steel also, there are several sectors where there is a threat of dumping because both India and US are key markets for China. So if there is a decoupling, if there is a very high tariff rate, some of the products could get diverted. And so these are some of the sectors which could face threat of dumping. Some sectors, there are various others, but here we look at those sectors where China's share in India's imports and China's share in US imports is quite significant and comparable. Now, we also try to assess the expected export loss on account of increased tariffs. We have done this exercise on the top 20 exports from India to the US. Here we show we want to show our approach. What we've done is we've looked at exports to the US in FY24, the tariff rate, and we have made some assumptions about price elasticity of demand, because with tariffs, the prices are expected to rise. So there will be some commodities, there will be some products, some sectors where elasticity of demand is higher due to substitutability, due to the fact that there are various other countries available to supply that product. But there could be other sectors where the price elasticity of demand would be lower because of uniqueness, because of style, design, and the fact that it takes time to reconfigure this entire value chain and get into the market. So we've just shown examples of 3 sectors where the relative export loss would be lower. We look at marine products, gold and other precious metal jewelry, where we assume elasticity to be around 0.4. And then there are sectors like electronic components, where we assume high elasticity because there are several competitors in addition to USMCA, US, Mexico, Canada. There are several competitors available. So there the hit to exports is likely to be larger. We have this bigger table where we show for the 20 sectors and the overall export loss based on the elasticity, price elasticity of demand. And according to our calculation, the export loss is likely to be 0.38% of GDP. This is, of course, based on assumptions of elasticity, but overall, we do see a hit of around 0.38 to 0.45%. Elasticity is based on tariff differential, substitutability, supply chain time, supply chain types, and comparative advantage. But we know that now the tariffs have been, rollout of tariffs have been paused, and it's very important to look at what could be one of the possible reasons for the pausing of tariffs. We see that it is actually the bond market that punished the US administration, and it resulted in, prompted them to roll back the tariffs. So typically in crisis periods, when there is turmoil in markets, we see that there is the investors, domestic as well as foreign investors, tend to flock towards dollar and dollar-backed assets. But that conventional setup did not play out after the 2nd April, and we see that the US 10-year bond yield jumped sharply in this period from 2nd to 9th of April, when the tariff rollout was paused. And similarly, if we look at the dollar index, instead of strengthening, because normally there is increased safe haven asset status of dollar, normally dollar appreciates during crisis period, but during this period we saw that dollar weakened. And if now we look, dollar index, which is a gauge of dollar in comparison to its trading partners, it's even below 100. So this seems to be one of the possible reasons for the pause on the tariff rollout, because the increase in bond yields have serious repercussions for the US economy in terms of increase in the cost of borrowing, not only for the government, but also for households, corporates, and so on. And we see that, the IMF's fiscal monitor has projected a sharp increase in US debt to GDP ratio. So all these things could have shaped the decision to pause the rollout. But despite the pause, we see that India's growth prospects are likely to be hit. There are several channels through which the impact could be felt. One is the direct impact, where exports are likely to be hit due to tariffs. Of course, there could be some cushioning because of the trade deal, which is in the works, and but that would involve India sacrificing its trade surplus with the US. On the other side, imports could see a surge due to diversion of products not only from China but from Bangladesh, from Vietnam. There could be a diversion of products from these countries as well, having a bearing on India's trade deficit and current account deficit. But more importantly, it is the indirect impact which is prominent, which could hit growth, which is the rising probability of recession. High inflation is likely to dent global growth and India's growth prospects. So it's not only just the direct hit on goods exports, but services exports, which have been till now, promoting exports, could also be hit, because US is a major market for services exports, and there we could see a hit. And therefore, because of all these reasons, it is our view that IMF's growth projections do not incorporate the impact of the larger scale disruptions in the US, and therefore the dent to global growth and India's growth. What could be some of the policy measures to cushion the impact? One is, firstly, of course, the reducing the trade surplus with the US by importing more oil and other products, but also accelerating trade negotiations, securing sector-specific exemptions, diversifying export markets, not only away from US, and also accelerating trade negotiations with US, UK, ASEAN markets, not only focusing just on tariff barriers, but also non-tariff barriers, and providing impetus to some of the sectors where we do have some potential of growth, and looking at calibrated concessions so that the trade deal with the US gets into place and the trade tensions are eased. Also strengthening export infrastructure and logistics. There is a lot of demand from some sectors about having a PLI scheme for some sectors like gems, textiles, toys, etc. That is something that needs to be considered, given that PLI scheme has been successful in only one or two sectors and not all. So that is something to be considered. But overall, definitely a host of trade measures and monetary policy support that we'll talk later is needed to cushion the impact of the lingering trade-related uncertainty. Thank you.
Thank you. So, let's underline the main takeaways.
What Radhika has laid as the picture that we see in the world. Now we are in the domestic front. So where how the economy performed during 24-25 and what lies ahead in 25-26. So according to the second advance estimate of CSO, there is a moderation of growth. So a significantly moderation of growth from 23-24. This moderation was driven by mainly the lower growth in public expenditure and investment, both public and private. Although we had some pickup in the private demand and improvement in trade balance, real trade balance, because net export being a negative number, negative growth means improvement in the trade balance. Despite of these positive developments, we had a growth moderation in 24-25. Now, across the 3 quarters, we have the realized growth rate of those 3 quarters. Now, if the economy has grown at a 6.5% in 24-25, this implies that in Q4, India has recorded a strong growth of 7.2%. Now, the question is that really whether that's a realistic situation or not. And we'll look at various indicators, high frequency indicators, to to see that whether these demand components and in the production side, what the implied growths in the last quarter of the year are really are possible or we have really realized or not. So, for example, private demand growth that in over the years is 7.6% means that in Q4, given the growth rates in over the 3 quarters, means it would have grown at 9.2%, which is very remarkable experience for us. But really, did we really have this rate of growth or not? Similarly, investment shows a maintenance of the trend, and that's also we'll see that what the high frequency indicators indicate. Now coming to the production side. In 24-25, there was a broad-based decline in non-agri growth rate, driven by industry and services, the lowering growth in industry and services, whereas agriculture performed quite well due to the favorable weather factors. Now again, that implies that if agriculture has grown at a rate of 4.6% during 24-25, given the growth rates over the 3 quarters, it would have recorded a very high growth of 6.3%, and that now again we'll see with the high frequency indicators performances that whether that's really possible or not. So going now, let's move to the what our high frequency indicators say. So as we have seen that the implied growth of private consumption demand 9.2% seems unrealistic to us, given that there is a the demand situation showing a mixed picture across rural and urban areas. In the rural sector, the real wage growth having a increasing trend, showing a sort of a buoyant demand growth. The growth rate in the domestic sale of tractors is also quite high in the in Q4, also indicating there is a high the rural demand played a role in picking up the private demand. But on the other hand, in the urban sector, if we look at the consumers' sentiment index, both for future and the current situation, it was deteriorating since the beginning of this year of 24-25, and then it stagnated in between. But yet it's still lower than the what was there during the Q4 of the last financial year. So we cannot then this performance of these indicators actually telling us that having a 9.2% growth rate would be very optimistic scenario. Now coming to the some of the production side indicators. Agriculture, we see that the implied growth is 6.3%, but India never achieved this high rate of 6.3% growth in agriculture. Particularly, if we look at the last quarter of 24-25, the rainfall was on average 44% below the normal level. And due to that, the area sown under Rabi crop was very marginally increased compared to the previous year, and the area under oilseeds actually contracted. Also, there is rise in the cost of production in most of the in the major food grain items. So, given this scenario, 6.3% growth in agriculture is really seems to us quite optimistic. Not realistic, unrealistic. Next, coming to industry, implied growth is 5.7. But we see that from January, where the IIP growth rate was 5.5%, has declined to 2.8%. So it's around 4.8% 3% or so. So it's again whether the industry can achieve a 5.7% growth or not is still is a question. And we can actually see what actually happened by the end of May. Even we don't know what actually happened during this period. Services also, we see that the picture is not very encouraging. 7.8% services growth seems improbable. The first, if we look at the first panel, the blue line, it's the growth rate in the services output index of CSO. All the categories of services growth, except for information and communication and some other kinds of services, these are down. The services growth is down. Also, the PMI of services has been declining, showing a broad declining trend since the beginning of the year 24-25. So this also says that high services growth is again quite unrealistic for Q4. Now, given these background trends, we and also we come to the investment. What happens to investment? Here for investment, we see some encouraging pictures, given that the projects cost announced by private sectors that showed a very high growth rate, a rebound and a very high growth rate in Q4. Although the projects cost growth under implementation are moderate, showing that the Q4 investment growth could be moderate, but a high announcement growth is actually indicating that we have some good hope for 25-26. Now, given this background trends, we come to our baseline forecast for Indian economy for 24-25 and 25-26. According to our estimate, the 24-25 Q4 growth is only 6.3% compared to the implied growth of 7.2%. So given the downward performance of industry and services, and that the agricultural factors are not even playing very favorable part in agricultural growth, that we have seen in the high frequency indicators performances, our growth forecast for Q4 is 6.3% for 24-25, and our overall growth forecast is 6.2 for 24.
This is without getting into the impact of Trump. That is important too.
Yeah. So as I said, that this is based on the trend of the indicators till March. So that has not taken into account the what could be the expected shock. But so with the same trend, and there is some with the hope of higher investment, the improvement in investment scenario, our projection for 25-26 is 6.6%. So we before the Trump shock appeared, our view was that we would improve in 25-26.
From the dynamic factor.
Yeah. Now we try to see if we incorporate the Trump shock, what would be our situation in 25-26. So in one scenario, we assume that the price effect, that is in Radhika's presentation, we have seen that the impact of exports, impact of tariff shock to Indian exports will be 0.38% of GDP, the loss. If we take that as the loss, but at the same time, as she has indicated, that there will be, we have opportunities also. So if we take that the net impact is zero, only the impact is coming from the disruptions through the income, effect. That is the global growth rate, the decline in global growth rate. If we take that as our one of our scenarios, then we project that 25-26 growth is 5.8%. So it's even lower than what the IMF has projected at 6.2%. However, even this 5.8 to our view is at the higher end. As Radhika already discussed and Sarah also pointed out that the disruptions, the bigger disruptions that we are expecting because of the massive cut down of shrinking of the government size and other sort of policy changes in US, that there will be higher impact on US growth and hence global growth and hence on Indian growth. So one close example that we can think of the impact of global financial crisis. So during this crisis, the global growth declined from 5.3% in 2007 to 2.9 in 2008, and it contracted to 0.4% in the next year before reviving to 5.2% via massive fiscal and monetary stimulus. Correspondingly, Indian growth declined from 7.4% in 27-28 to 4.3%, which is a kind of 3% decline. Before rebounding to 6.9% in 29-10 with the aid of fiscal and monetary stimulus. So we can expect that the similar of an impact of similar degree we can see due to these disruptions happening in the world, in US and hence to the world. Now we come to inflation.
Some of the key takeaways. Your first and very convincing argument was that the second advanced estimates that we have got from MOSPI are clearly an very optimistic overestimate, and our assessment, this is without getting into Trump, that anyway would be much lower. And then you factor in the Trump effect based on the IMF projections of global growth, which we have already said is again optimistic. We have not done our own global projections. Taking that, you get a dip of Indian growth to 5.8%. But as we've just said, that you feel that it's an underestimate. A more reasonable expectation may be something like not obviously the COVID shock, that was too much, but the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, in which case we lost about 2 to 3% growth till the policy stimulus kicked in.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah. So if you see that during the crisis, the global growth declined from 5.3% to 2.9. If we take that impact, now we are at 6.2%, and the global growth is 2.8%. So if that decline we take into account, so to our assessment, it will be like around 3% decline, similar decline that we experienced during that period.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a scientific projection, but that's, looking at that analogy, right.
That's our judgment, like
it's a judgment. Okay.
Yes. So now coming to the inflation front, we are for inflation, we are in a very happy and relaxed situation because its inflation rate is headline inflation is at 3.3%, which is below the target. This decline in inflation rate is mainly driven by the decline in food inflation, a broad-based decline in most of the components of food, and particularly deflation in vegetables and pulses prices. And although there is some increase in prices in some of the components of food prices. Now, but we have also seen that there is a rebound of CPI core and energy inflation. This rebound of CPI core is mainly in the services, in some of the components of the services. And also we have seen that services growth has declined. So that suggests that this rise in services inflation is supply constraint, due to the supply constraint. So we see some decline, some rebound in core and energy inflation, but still the food inflation is dominating, as food has the highest share in the consumption basket. So given this trend, this declining trend in food, our inflation projection is again very happy. Is we are going to have only 3%, 3.1% inflation in 25-26. However, we have the upside risk that we have seen that some of the components in food are rising, like sugar, edible oil, and in the core, like the house rent, maintenance charges, health and professional charges, health and professional charges, and gold prices. These are rising, so that might push up the inflation rate in 25-26. So that's the upward risk, whereas the recession in US might work as a negative demand shock for India, and that will reduce because through the exports it will reduce export, and that's why the prices in the inflation rate in India. So our projection, inflation projection, is slightly higher than slightly lower than what RBI's projection of 4% for 25-26. So we don't have any sort of very very striking projection for inflation. We see a benign relaxed situation. Now we come to see what we find for the employment. So overall employment indicators are improving. The LFPR, the labor force participation rate, an indicator of labor supply, that has increased from the quarter October-December in last year to the same quarter this year. So again, here we are looking at what's happening to the employment indicators in the short term. We have only access to the information for the urban area, because NSSO PLFS surveys for higher frequencies only for urban areas. So this is not giving the entire urban and rural, but to some we are giving some, tracking some of the developments in employment here. Working population ratio, WPR, which is an indicator of the actual employment, that's also improved the third quarter of previous year to same quarter this year. Unemployment rate, which stayed more or less stable for males. For females, it has declined significantly. So this says that there is some positive developments happen in terms of unemployment rate for females. Now we see some interesting positive developments happening across the sectors in terms of employment as well as the status of employment. So we see that the services share of employment is rising for both male and female. This is, well, for males, the share for industry remains the same. For women, it's actually declining, but it's increasing for the services sector. Next, we come to the status of employment. So here also we see some interesting development happening. We see that the formal employment for female workers rising. That's rising for males as well, but the rise is more significant for females compared to the males. So during the COVID period, we have seen that the employment was concentrated in agriculture, and also according to the status in the in the category of helpers and unpaid helpers. So that we see a shift from there is happening, and which is definitely good for the economy. But again, this is till the October, December 25. Now with all these impacts that we are talking about, particularly in the export sector, which are labor intensive, now we really, we can see a reversal of these trends due to the upcoming shocks in the world.
Yes.